TTIN is like a podcast that capture each individual out of their now and so and allow others to view the now as well. And so with no further ado, if you could introduce yourself.
Sure. Well, again, thanks for having me, Regina. Really excited about this opportunity. I'm Stanley H Greene, and Greene has an E on the end, and president of Power Thinking Corp. So proud to be here.
That's good. That's great. Thank you so much. And can you tell us, like, what led you to what are you doing right now? What is your now?
Mine now is helping people to, and I have actually this vision board, which is actually on my phone. It's a digital vision board that I envisioned probably 10 years ago, that this is where I want to be for the rest of my life. And so I'm living that in the now. And that vision board actually has a picture of this sign that says impossible, and it has a person, is the I am, and then a space, and then there's a possible, and there's a person leaping from the I am part of possible to the possible. So I help people actually, move from what they think is impossible to what is possible. And I do it globally. So the other piece of this vision board has a globe with hands, different ethnicities, holding it up. And then the other part has cash. So the way I make my money is actually helping people move from what is impossible, what they thought was impossible, to what's possible. And I do it globally. And so that's what I do now. And it manifests itself through a company that I created called Power Thinking. And so what I do in helping people go from the impossible to the possible is focus on their minds. That's the most powerful asset that we have. And most people don't realize that we have this incredible power within us. It's already within us to accomplish whatever we put our minds to. And most of it, in terms of that accomplishment, is kind of erasing that, well, I don't know if I can do it, don't think I can do it, and having them tap into the mindset around, yes, I can do this. I have the power to make whatever it is that I want to accomplish happen.
That's great. And what led you to this particular now?
Yeah, great question, Regina. So it's been a series of events over my lifetime that led me to it, going all the way back to my childhood, where I grew up in Philadelphia, first in West Philadelphia at around 32nd and Haverford Avenue, then in North Philadelphia at around 30th and Diamond, and then into the Germantown section and West Oak Lane section of Philadelphia. And through those experiences, I had a situation. My mother had 6 children, and so I'm one of 6. And, there was a point where, my dad actually left when I was about 10 years old. And here it is, just my mom and 6 kids, and struggling to deal with things that were happening, not only with her in terms of her mental well-being as a result of this, but also the financials and having to try to pitch in and carry bags at the grocery store, with my brothers to kind of bring some dollars home. But I remember that was a stressful time, and my mother suffered what was called then a nervous breakdown, where she had to be hospitalized. And so it was dealing with, what was going on in her head, but she bounced back. She bounced back stronger. And then she actually helped other people. She became part of an organization that helped her when the house was going to go into foreclosure and so forth. And the organization was called CEPA, CEPA, Consumer Education Protective Association. And so she was helped by this organization so that the house didn't go into foreclosure and so forth. But then she decided she was going to help other people. And that's what helped her to bounce back, because she did what we teach in Power Thinking. And that is, that she had empathy, she focused on other people's experiences and emotions, and it actually helped her because she recognized that other folks were having problems, and if she could help them, it actually helped her. So she became the grievance chair lady of that organization, in that she would take the concerns and the grievances from the people where they may have been ripped off and may not have gotten good service, from a company. And she would negotiate with those companies. And if they did not do what needed to be done, then she would organize a picket. They would have picket signs that say, "This business is a bad business." And she actually helped to get laws changed in Pennsylvania, consumer laws, to make sure that companies wouldn't do this to other people. And so I witnessed that, and how she was able to take that adversity and then turn it into something positive to help other people. And then, moving through, I played sports in school and in high school, and the way that all happened was that I could not play sports, and I remember being told to come play a basketball game with these guys because they didn't have enough people, and I tried to tell them that I didn't know how to play, and they told me to get in anyway. And then I totally embarrassed myself because I would run around with the basketball instead of dribbling it. I mean, something that basic, I just didn't know how to do. And I was teased and teased, and that was my adversity. And I was determined to learn how to master that game. And a few years later, I was recruited by various colleges and wound up playing at the University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League school. But then moving on to business, taking over organizations at the telephone company, what is now Verizon. I was a 23-year-old, managing the construction people that go out on those trucks, and they're on the poles and those bucket trucks, or they're in the manholes. You see the blowers in the manhole. I was 23 years old and supervised a group of them out of Northeast Philadelphia. My youngest guy was 34. My oldest guy, when I was 23, was 64 years old. And I was their boss, and I didn't know anything about their job, but I was told that I had to improve their productivity, that they were not good producers. And so I had to figure out how to get into their head, develop a trust, and then help them to elevate and do what most people thought was impossible. They said, "You'll never get those guys to produce." And then there was assignment after assignment. I ran cable TV companies when I was in my 30s. I was a vice president of Verizon to turn the culture of that company around when I was about 37, when they were just a regular telephone company, but they were looking to get into cable TV, as they are today, with what is now Fios. I was in the early stages of that back in the mid 90s. So there were just assignment after assignment where the common thread was people are not doing as good as they should. Can you help to elevate them? And so when I fast forward to around 2011 or so, when I had an opportunity to buy a company that all it did was focus on helping people to change their mindset, I said, boy, I would love to run that company. I created Power Thinking. We bought the assets of that company called Reflective Learning. And now I'm doing what I've always excelled in, and that is helping other people to elevate themselves.
Wow, that's a true beauty right there, because you saw your mother, she inspired you to be a better person through her hard time, and then you also became an inspiration to many as well too, through your leadership and all other title that you held, which is beyond amazing. It's really, really, really good. And
Well, there were just a few. I have so much more. I tell you, there was a music video channel called The Box, and it would play music videos. People would order them over the phone. It was back in the 90s. And I took over that company when I was 40 as the president to turn it around because they were almost out of business. And I told them I'd turn them around in 6 months. We did. And then it was sold to MTV too. So a lot of the employees that I had back then are now part of MTV. I started a news channel in Philadelphia that became part of Comcast. If people would Google the Comcast network in Wikipedia and look at the history of the Comcast network, one of the things that they mentioned was that in order for them to create their own news organization, they bought a company called Tri-State Media. That was a company I created. I named it and everything, and we created the first cable news operation in Philadelphia back in 1999. So there were a lot of experiences where we were tasked to do the impossible. And in fact, this idea of helping people go from the impossible to the possible came from that news operation when they gave me a gift at the end of the year, and it's all beat up and dusty looking now, but it's a Palm Pilot, one of the first kind of the predecessor to the smartphones. But they engraved on it something really powerful, and it said, with your leadership and guidance, we were able to reach for the stars and achieve what most people thought was impossible. And that was amazing. And I keep that, and that was the inspiration for what I have now as my vision statement. But it came from those people in 1999 when in 8 weeks they said, Stan, it's impossible for us to create a news operation and have a news bureau in Harrisburg and South Jersey and all these places in 8 weeks. And we did it. And then Comcast said, wow, we want to take that over. And it became part of what was called the Comcast network. But it's those stories that most people don't know. You didn't know about all of this. And I'm so happy that you're giving me the opportunity to share that with you and with your audience, that there's so many things that each person can accomplish if only they believe that they can.
Wow, that's like an amazing, wow, that's really good. Like, congratulations and thank you. I mean, like, cause like you played a role for many of us, even though we may not even know what was happening. You played the role for us to be able to watch like a Comcast and so forth. So that's really good. That's really, we really appreciate that a lot. And so you spoke about the strength of your mother and how because of her taking her adversity and transforming it into something beyond amazing that led you to your now and so forth. How has the difficulty of your father caused you to continue to be strong for your mother throughout your life?
Yeah, well, then I remember seeing my mother kind of go through this, and I remember there were certain things that she was saying, and I said, something's wrong. And I knew that I had to grow up pretty quickly. First time I noticed it was when I was about 10 years old. It was her first incident. And I knew that I had to, not just be the regular kid just playing and so forth, but be there, to help my mother with whatever. And that continued, throughout her life, where I was always there for her to help. And I didn't, you hear things about people being angry at their dad, they didn't have a dad and so forth. I never really thought about that. I was just so focused on, what I had to do at that point, that I never really, focused on it. I don't hold any, any grudges or anything. It's just, hey, I was too busy focusing on trying to be positive and be there for my mother and my siblings, throughout her life and throughout their lives. So, that I never really gave too much thought, although I did hold on to some of the times that we did have experiences. He was a mover, and he worked for this major moving company called North American Van Lines. And there were times when he took me on trips, to when he would move folks, it could be 5-hour drive to bring them to New York or so. And I would help him, move folks. And so, I would hold on to some of the positive things and just not deal with anything else, just kind of focus on the family. So you're really probing. I never said this kind of stuff, told people this. So you're really getting into it. I commend you for this opportunity in this show. and for giving me the opportunity now to think through a lot of things that may have happened in the past that made me who I am today.
Thank you. Thank you. And so you were one of six. Where did you stood and how did that impact your growth as an individual?
Yeah, I was number two. I have one older brother. And so, you know, what helped shape me is, it's just being around other siblings. We had a good time, despite some of the things that we talk about. You know how it is that you don't really realize how, that things may have been going bad, or you may have some adversity. What you focus on, or, is you focus on each other, and you find ways to have a good time. And we didn't have, much money, especially when my dad left, but we never really focused on that. We really just made every day a good day, and we didn't fight. We always had fun with each other, and so it was really good growing up. It really was, because we didn't focus on things that we didn't have. Actually, we were really grateful for what we did have growing up. So yeah, being number two, next to the oldest was kind of cool. And I think, as my older brother set, the tone for me, I think I kind of positively impacted my younger siblings as they were coming along as well.
Were you all boys, or were there also a mixture of girls and boys?
Yeah, 5 boys and 1 girl, and she was next to the youngest. But unfortunately, we just lost her before Thanksgiving due to breast cancer, and so that has been a big adversity that we still have to overcome. It's one thing when you lose a parent, but they're older, and that at some point you're going to lose your parent. But when you lose a sibling, and one that's 10 years younger, that's and she was the only girl. That's tough. So yeah, it was 5 boys and 1 girl. She was always talk about her brothers. She had these 5 brothers, and she was just a powerhouse in her own right. She was a jazz concert promoter out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and she would have the top jazz artists come to the Carolinas, Al Jarreau, and you name it. I mean, she had them, and folks loved her. In fact, when we did a Zoom memorial service for her, where we just wanted to keep it small with, just the inner circle of people that she knew. That was in December. It was 350 people. That was just a small inner circle. She was just an amazing lady, and little sis really was great. But yeah, thanks for asking. 5 boys, 1 girl.
Was my condolence.
Thank you.
And I can imagine how she must have had a great time being with amazing brothers, because by how I'm counting you, you're seem to be an amazing person. So that's good. And so you right now, your company is called Power Thinking. And so what do you do within Power Thinking? Like, what can you give me like a snippet of what it is your day-to-day base within Power Thinking?
Yes. So when we acquired this company called Reflective Learning, they were in possession of a 6-hour online course called Resilience Online that helped people bounce back from adversity faster. That it was developed by people out of the University of Pennsylvania's Positive Psychology Center, where they've done decades and decades of research on what makes people fall into a state of depression. like my mother had done at one point, into this state called learned helplessness. And it was a professor by the name of Dr. Martin Seligman who actually did the research around this to prove in that, yes, people can actually fall into a state of learned helplessness. They can learn to be helpless when they experience a series of setbacks and or a traumatic event. And where even though there's a way out and there's a way to succeed, they don't believe that they can. And then they started to study the opposite. Well, if people can learn to be helpless, can they also learn to be optimistic? Can they learn to bounce back from adversity, when it hits them faster? And they proved that, yes, they can. And they identified a series of 7 inner strengths such that if people were strong in these 7 areas, that they would bounce back faster from any adversity. And then they went further and they said, okay, so what would folks need to practice mentally to ensure that they are strong in these 7 areas? And so then they developed these 7 skills, so that if people were skilled, that they had these strong mental skills, that they would build up these strengths, and they could bounce back then from any adversity faster. And so they spent a lot of money creating the 6-hour course. And so when I acquired it, I tried to market it. But the problem was people would maybe take a module or 2, but wouldn't complete it. And it led me to come up with a different way to get people to build their skills. And that's through Wednesday calls that we have, just 30 minutes on Wednesdays, 7:30 to 8 a.m. and then 9:30 to 10 p.m., where I'm actually teaching this material and reinforcing it every single week, so that over time, people will find themselves when they're in a down point, or maybe having an argument with a significant other, or getting cut off on traffic in traffic and getting angry, or being laid off from a job and being angry or sad or embarrassed about that because they have attended these calls and now they're used to hearing from other people about how they bounce back, but also hearing me focus on a particular skill and inner strength, that over time they find themselves automatically thinking differently when they are faced with adversity. So that's what we do, each Wednesday and most of my week is thinking about how we're going to prepare for the next series of calls. And then we give people an opportunity in the way we make money and help other people. We give them an opportunity to be a Power Thinking Plus member, where they would then have access to all of the calls over the past couple of years that we've done. And the videos that we would send out before our Wednesday calls, a 2 to 5 minute video that focuses on a particular area. And then we supplement that with quotes. We call them Power Thinking Boosts, so that on a Monday, 7:30, on a Thursday at 7:30 a.m., Friday at 7:30 a.m., they're getting quotes that, for example, this week, if we're focused on the power of the mind, they're getting quotes on the power of the mind that reinforces what we do on Wednesdays. And so those are just some of the things that we did. We modified that original model, which was a course that people would pay like $199 for to have access to me conducting sessions. And I've done this also for companies like Aflac, Merck, the most recent in December, the global pharmaceutical, and also Comcast. So really excited about what I do, and I get so much great feedback, every week, from the people who are part of Power Thinking.
Wow, that's like such a powerful role to take it upon yourself to be a strong, phenomenal leader throughout, this these weeks, these days, and so forth. It's very, I commend you for that, and I really applaud you as well too.
Thank you.
And, you're welcome. And how do you see you're now prospering within the years to come?
Yes, well, it's pretty simple, and that is that I just reach more and more and more people. I have partnerships. I have a partnership with a company called Infinity Coaching in Nairobi, Kenya. And so the goal is to, have folks in Kenya, be part of, what we do with our power thinking calls. In fact, one of my partners, she's on the calls typically every week. And thanks to technology, we can make the world smaller and have people participate, because I will send her the video that I send everyone else via WhatsApp. And, when we have our 7:30 a.m. call, it's 3:30 p.m. in Nairobi, and she can participate, and we'll get other folks to do so as well. I'm also involved with the Japan Positive Psychology Association in Tokyo, and I've done, lectures there. And we want to find ways to expand, what we do in Japan. And again, that comes from having that vision of saying, I want to be global with this and spread this around the world. And so then in China, I have a partner, and, I've done a session and have a 10-year visa to go into China at any point and be there for 60 days. So I've done work in Beijing and in Chongqing, China. Chongqing is probably one of the largest cities that people never heard of. They have 30 million people in Chongqing, and it's huge. And so we're dealing with the Psychological Association in Chongqing. And so what I've done is we've created these, what they wanted to do is have these micro courses that they would put on their platform in Chongqing and make available to the people there. So we're doing that, and then they translate it to Mandarin and get it out there. So I just see more of that, more people benefiting in the United States and all over the world.
That is bold. That is bold and very profound. And yes, I like your vision. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And do you have any family member as of your own, like children and so forth? All right.
Well, yes, married, and we've been married now for 37 years. This year we'll be going on 38. And my wife and I have known each other. This year it'll be 42 years that we've known each other. So it's absolutely amazing how fast time flies. And so I have a daughter, and she's in Michigan. She's at a high position at Facebook. She was 20 years at Ford Motor. A few years ago, when she was at Ford Motor, she was the director of marketing for the Middle East and Africa for Ford, and has done some great things. And I have a son who is in LA and is in the music industry. Last year, he was nominated or his project was nominated for a Grammy. So it was like his third Grammy nomination. But he started by just quitting his job at a big company to be a non-paid intern because he wanted to be in the music business. And so he went from having an income to no income, and having to work as a waiter and a bartender to make ends meet, while he was learning by being around one of the big audio mixers in the country, and then went out on his own and had a Grammy nomination for a song that was in a movie called Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which was nominated for a Grammy. It was performed by Will Smith. He engineered that song, or Will Smith's son, rather, Jaden Smith. And then he had a Grammy for Rihanna. It was a Grammy nomination for a song he did for her album. So he went from being out there with no money, trying to figure things out, to, doing things on his own, and now has a company called Architect that, they deal with artists and producers and things. Again, another sign of, using your power, whatever it is that you would want to do, to not be afraid and take those risks, even if it's going to be painful, and do it. And then my youngest son is the head coach at a school called Morristown Friends, private school, and for head coach for basketball at a private school in South Jersey, in Morristown, New Jersey. So I'm proud of them all, and proud of my wife, she's also a realtor. She went from, just raising children and then not knowing what she was going to do with her life because she didn't have her degree, to working at a supermarket part-time, and being the person that has those samples, hey, do you want to try this or that? And then she didn't think of herself as a salesperson. She said, I don't want to do sales. But yet when she was offering these samples, because she had this tremendous ability with people, and, had been in plays and things because she liked to do acting, that she could create this environment when people wanted to try the samples, and then they say, oh, give me the coupon for that. And she would sell out a certain product. And then she decided to parlay that into selling real estate, and then became a realtor for Coldwell Banker. So in each of the people in my family, in each of their lives, what they've done is really stretch themselves. And the real message of you learning about, my family, the message for everyone is that I don't care how difficult or how big whatever it is that you want to accomplish is, and it's seemingly impossible, that you already have the power to do it. You just have to get on that road, and take those different turns and all the pain, of trying to get there, and then the setbacks. But use your power in your thinking and in your beliefs to get there.
That's great. That's a great way to see life and see every things that come to you, every opportunity that come to you. Just see them as opportunity and so forth. And it's really, really amazing. So could you give us who's your who has inspired, other than your mother, who has inspired you and so forth throughout your career and so forth?
That's a great question. The thing is, there's not one person. There's so many people, and that's the beauty of life. You never can depend on one person to give you, all that you need to, I should say, to succeed, but most importantly, to overcome the adversity. So too many people focus on, okay, well, I want to be like this person because it looked like they just went right to success. Nobody does that. There's going to be bumps along the road, personal tragedies and adversities that you'll experience, professional. And so there are going to be a number of people that you're going to need to reach out to. That's one of the inner strengths of resilience, by the way. Reaching out, not thinking that, oh, I have everything that I need to hit success, but to have a number of people in your life, constantly adding those folks who are positive and are working through things and have worked through things. So there were coaches for me. My high school coach, who just reached out to me, he's in his 80s, reached out to me last week to find out how I'm doing. And he's coached a lot of teams and hundreds of young people. And yet, we still have this great relationship. And I learned a lot from him. My college coach, Chuck Daly, who was inducted into the Hall of Fame, for NBA, for basketball, because he coached, there was a guy named Dennis Rodman, and their teams played against Michael Jordan and everybody. They were the Detroit Pistons, and they were called the Bad Boys, and they won 2 NBA championships. And he actually also coached the Dream Team that had in the Olympics many years ago that had the best players in the world. But he was a great inspiration to me. He, when I was a young person on the team, my first year on the team, he inspired me to be the best, what's called defender. And I would take on the best players of the other team and hold them down. There were entrepreneurs like Jerry Lenfest, who just passed away a few years ago. He actually sold his company to Comcast to help make them the biggest in the world. But he hired me as a 33-year-old general manager of one of his cable systems, one of his worst cable systems. And I turned around and made it one of the best. And then he's the one that gave me other assignments that, helped me to become who I am today. Ralph Roberts, who's the founder of Comcast, he was a friend, a really good friend. And, I learned a lot from him. His son is now the CEO and has been the CEO of Comcast for many, many years. So those are just a few of the people who have been an inspiration, in my life, from a business standpoint. Sonny Hill is one who many people may not know, but if you're in Philadelphia in the basketball community, you know him. He's in his 80s now, but just a tremendous man who had inspired me to, as an African American, to really reach for the stars and be the best. And then there was a gentleman named Ron Bond, who was an executive at the University of Pennsylvania when I was in school. He sold me my first car. He was the director of recreation for the University of Pennsylvania, African American man. So there was somebody that looked like me, who wore a suit and tie every day. He had an office and he had a secretary. This was something that I hadn't seen. And I thought, wow, I'd like to have an office one day. I'd like to have a secretary one day and be the boss. So those are just a few of the people who have been an inspiration and have been mentors to me over the years.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. Could you give us like a inspirational statement or like a motivational statement for the audience that are going to be watching?
Yeah, I have something that I say at the end of there's all kinds of quotes. You can look for quotes for, the power of the mind, or, accomplishing your goals, and you'll have all kinds of people give you all kinds of quotes. But at the end of my 30-minute calls, I usually say this one thing, and that is, since we spend most of our time thinking, we must utilize power thinking. And what I mean by that is that, our brains are processing 50,000 thoughts a day, at least. It's kind of hard to, picture that. But if we stop for 60 seconds and we just kind of look around the room, and as we are doing that, just kind of take note of every thought, like, oh, there's a picture, I'm looking at a picture of my family, or that's a thought. My diploma from college, that's a thought, or the TV, the thought. It's your brains are processing this and says, okay, this is what that is. And you'll probably come up with about 35 of those thoughts in just 60 seconds. Unfortunately, however, a significant number of our thoughts are negative, where we're telling ourselves that, well, we can't do this, or, I wish I could make that, but I guess I can't. And those are thoughts. And those thoughts are powerful, because if we're saying things about ourselves and to ourselves that are not moving us forward, then we're not going to move forward. It's just not going to happen. And so what I mean when I say, we must utilize power thinking, and since we spend most of our time thinking, I mean that yes, as we wake up and even as we sleep, when people have dreams, our brains are moving, our brains are processing, and we have these dreams, and sometimes crazy dreams, but it's coming from our thoughts. And we may wake up and go, whoa, that was interesting. So our brains are still working even as we're sleeping. And so since we are always thinking, then why not think with power? We must utilize power thinking and not let our thoughts just kind of take us wherever they're going to take us. And many times in negative directions, and many times to realize negative emotions. We must think with power and utilize power thinking. We must be able to identify those thoughts, like we tell people on these calls, and be able, if they're negative, to catch them and then turn them around and make them positive so they can benefit us. So yeah, since we spend most of our time thinking anyway, we must utilize power thinking.
Wow, that's amazing. That's great. Thank you so much for allowing us to capture your now. And I wish I could I want to ask you more questions, because your brain seems to have so much treasure in it. I want to keep digging.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We have many years of stuff, that's for sure. And you're bringing it out. You're doing a great job of bringing it out.
But we will cut it. We'll end it here. And I know in the future, if you don't mind, we'd love to continue. We'd love to have you back on to TTIN.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So Stanley, thank you so much for allowing us to capture your now, because the time is now to always utilize power thinking.
That's right. That's right. I like that. The time is now to utilize power thinking. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Regina. Thank you for having me. Thank you for your insightful questions and the opportunity for to share the kinds of things that I normally don't share, but I think would be beneficial to everyone to know.
Thank you, Stan. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate you.